Okay, our final lecture on the PPE manual. So I'm going to go to student resources here, and I'm going to click on content areas and interview questions. Um, so these serve several purposes, okay? The content areas and interview questions are a way for you to kind of um, have a starting point, should say, for discussions when you are meeting with different areas of an organization, okay? So I'm not going to read all of this opening information, okay? So what I have here, and by the way, you can click on this little pop out and it's going to actually take you to a PDF of this document. So I think maybe I'll work from this just for now while I'm going through these with you. So I have a very large table here broken out. And so what I started with is just general interview questions. Okay. So as you're meeting with individuals, maybe you're meeting with somebody that you just weren't expecting, you hadn't thought about. I don't even have a good example off the top of my head here, but you're meeting with somebody that you just weren't expecting, right? And you don't know kind of how to start the conversation. These are just general interview questions that you can use when you meet with anybody. And so they're basic, but they're just a way for you to kind of get going, right? Get the conversation started. You can always ask them about themselves. That's always a great way um, to start conversations and to keep the conversation going. If it starts getting dry, is starting to talk to them about themselves, right? And asking them kind of how they got to where they are, their background, education, those kinds of things. You can always ask them about their customers or who they serve and who serves them. Um, and then also departmental structure and meetings. So how they kind of fit into the organization and how their department is structured. Okay, those are kind of general meeting questions. Sorry, interview questions. So then we have content areas. Okay, and so these are areas that you can use when you're meeting with your site mentor to get like, for example, this one, overview of organization and department. These are just questions to get you started in terms of understanding what the organization is all about, how the department is structured, those kinds of things. But then there's also, of course, specific areas of the organization, and there are content areas. So if you're meeting with somebody in coding, these might be really great questions to get you going, okay? I think the thing, though, to understand is that, and how I would like you to use these as, like I said, a starting point, but also in preparation. The students that I see being the most successful and getting the most out of their PPEs prepare in advance for meetings. Now, your mentor should be giving you a schedule, and in that schedule, you're going to know who you're going to meet with from day to day, right? And so say that tomorrow you're meeting with the privacy and security officers, and you're maybe meeting with I don't know, maybe the coding manager and I don't know who else, but tonight then, the day before, before going into that meeting, it'd be great if you pulled out these questions, the questions related to that content area. So if you're looking for privacy and security, and we have data governance here, we have data management, we have, um, even for those of you that might not, that might be going to organizations that are not specifically healthcare providers. I have sets of questions for different things here. Health law. So maybe it's potential that the privacy and security officer might be able to answer some of the questions related to health law. Um, but here's data privacy, confidentiality, and security. Okay, so the day before, I would say brush up on these questions, pull them out, make copy and paste them, however you're going to take notes, print this out, print out the section, whatever you want to do. But review these, get an idea of what you want to know. Maybe there are other questions that you want to ask based on other meetings that you've attended at the organization, things you want to find out. But always prepare for your meetings. That is going to reflect so well on you okay, as a professional, that you were prepared. It's going to show the person that you're interviewing that you're truly interested in what they do and that you want to know, okay? This is all going to be reflected in your eval at the end, and you're going to have a better experience. Just trust me, if you're prepared, you're going to learn so much more. The other thing is maybe you're meeting with somebody, maybe it's coding, right? And you're just, oh, I just hate coding. Maybe you're one of those students. I just don't like coding, but you got to meet with this individual, right? You have to meet with them. Um, and so, what can you do to make that an interesting meeting? Okay, prepare for it. Um, Maybe look at current trends in coding, some different things that might interest you um, in it. Okay, but always go in prepared um, and with a smile. Okay. Uh, uh, whatever the area is that you maybe don't find that interesting, just make sure you're always prepared. Okay. So this is a very long table. I'm not going to go through all these, but definitely familiarize yourself with them and use it. Use it to help you, okay? This is not like the end all and be all and the only questions you can ask. This is basically a starting point for you, okay? So, so use that how you would like. Okay, so that's our content areas and interview questions. The content area thing will come into play again, obviously in the final PPE report here. So I'm going to click on the final PPE report instructions. This is a very important page of this manual. Okay, this is where you need to be really, you need to have a good understanding of what you need um, to get out of your PPE in order to complete these items in this and develop this report. Okay. So I'm just going to quickly go over the page from a high level and then maybe just dive into a few things. I do plan to do some more in-depth lectures as we get closer to the PPE to just maybe help you with each of these sections. So here's the outline, right? I talked a little bit about this in lecture 3. These are the sections of your final PPE report. The first one is your PPE project. This is an outline of what would be included in that section. The content area essays, as I mentioned, these are 5 essays, so 5 distinct content areas. I'll talk a little bit more about that, what those can be. The workflow analysis has 2 sections. It's a workflow diagram of a process at the PPE site and then a process analysis report. So how could that process or workflow be improved? Okay. And then remember, if you can't do a workflow analysis because you're remote or for other circumstances, if you can't do that, then you're going to do an exploration in its place. Okay, and here is the outline for the exploration. Okay, and back up here to management leadership principles. This has 3 components. As I mentioned earlier or in previous lecture, it's an interview. You're going to develop an organization chart. This has to be of your own creation. I don't want you copying and pasting the organization's organization chart. That's not acceptable. I want to see that you can develop one, okay? And then a management function paper, so where you discuss the management functions that the leader performs. And then lastly, a reflection paper, okay? So this report is very large as it has 5 sections and each of them are very specific, okay? Then scrolling down, okay, I have it broken out here for each section, the specific instructions that you should follow when you're completing each section. I do not want to read this all to you. I want you to take the time to read it, okay, and understand what is expected of you for each section. So this is the PPE project. So before going in, I want you to know what you need to accomplish and what you need to report on, okay? So you're going to provide an introduction overview of the project, including a problem statement. So you need to create a problem statement and understand why you're completing the project. I have had students complete projects and in the end could not tell me why they completed the project for the organization. You need to understand that, okay? Make sure that when you're meeting with the mentor, when you first get your project, that you come away with a good understanding of what the problem is and why you're doing the project, okay? So the introduction is going to provide an overview, okay? It's going to give a problem statement, a description, a purpose, the timeline, so when you are expected to complete it, and the deliverable, so what is the end product going to be? You'll describe your strategy and action plan. You'll talk about the methodology, which can be very similar to your strategy and action plan, but This is where you're talking about the resources that you're using, the interviews, the data collection, the research, supporting documentation used, all of those things that you did to get to the end product. Then you're going to describe the results, recommendations, findings resulting from the project, and then the deliverable, the end product. I want to make a couple comments here about the end product. First of all, sometimes the end product can't be shared with me. And it can't be shared with your classmates because it has PHI on it. And that is just fine. Maybe you're developing or using some kind of a spreadsheet or something like that. Anytime you can give us kind of samples, so maybe even taking a little, creating a mock spreadsheet and filling it with fake information to just give us a visual, give me, and when I say us, I mean your classmates, because when you give your presentation and seminar, you're going to need to explain your project and share what you did. And so anytime you can give us a visual of what it was that you developed or you produced, is good. The other thing is that it's really important to make sure that whatever that end product is, that you can share it with me and with your classmates. So this is where you need to talk with your mentor about what can you share, what can't you share, okay, and what they'll allow. So make sure that you do that before you just start um, sharing everything with me, okay, in your final report, okay? Sometimes mentors will ask you to give a presentation of your final project to the department or to whoever the project impacts, right, at the organization. If you end up giving a presentation during your PPE, I want slides and copies of that. The other thing is that if you use any references and resources outside of the organization, definitely develop an APA formatted reference page, okay? And then what I've done is I've created a rubric for each section. And this rubric will be used to grade your final PPE report. Okay. So all of the information for each section is just like this, and you can use it to help you develop strong sections of your report. Okay. Next is content areas. Okay. So each student will address 5 content areas within the final PPE report. You can pick content areas from the content areas and interview questions page that I just went over. But maybe there's some things that are more interesting to you that you experienced, especially if you're at a really non-traditional type of a PPE site. There may be things that you experience that just aren't on that content area list, but that you found really interesting. Okay, so just a few examples. And if you have questions about this, please don't ever hesitate to reach out and email me. If you think like, can I write about this, Katie? Can I, however you want to go about it. But I've had students write about different roles. So maybe they met with somebody and they were just fascinated by what they did, right? It was a really unique position that the person held. They wrote an essay about that, okay? Um, maybe the department or the manager or whoever you were working with were working on a really interesting project themselves. What was, maybe they were implementing a certain application at the organization. And you can write about that. Maybe they have a really great employee program that is just wonderful and contributes to morale and a really great work culture, those kinds of things. Maybe you're inspired by something somebody said to you. Maybe you attended a really interesting meeting. Maybe it was a medical staff meeting and you just found it to be really interesting. You could write about the meeting and things like that. And so it's not just, obviously there's more to it here, but I'm just giving you some ideas, right? But of course you could pick coding, you could pick privacy and security, you can pick from that list, the list of content areas, and that is just fine. Okay. All right, so I'm not going to read these specific instructions. I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about these essays. So first of all, each essay should have an introduction, body, and then a conclusion, right? So the introduction, you're going to provide some relevant background and the specific purpose of your essay. So why did you select the topic that you did? Clearly and thoroughly explain the content area, whether it's a person, a role, a process, a project, a policy, whatever it might be. Okay. And then you're going to describe in the body, you're going to explain the content area you've chosen, right? Um, and then each paragraph should provide information that supports the overall purpose of the essay. Okay, so back up here. Use appropriate, relevant, and compelling information to illustrate your mastery of the subject and your understanding of the content area. So really explain to me kind of like why they're doing what they're doing, um, and the things, I don't know how else to say it, but you know, really demonstrate your understanding of whatever it is that you're writing about. If it's a project, really explain, all the aspects of the project and why they're completing the project, what it means to the organization. Okay. And then the last couple things here, explaining the relationship of the content area to HIM course content. Answer the question, how did your exploration of the content area connect to your academic work? So this might be a reading, this might be a project or an assignment you did in a course. This might be a lecture that you had from Madonna LeBlanc about something in med legal. Whatever that might be, try to connect it back to your academic work and what you've learned in class, right? Then provide 2 examples, of course, content from readings, assignments, projects, presentations, or lectures. Okay, so in doing that, incorporate 2 examples. Okay, then your conclusion, summarize the information you shared, and then any concluding thoughts on the content area. Okay, so that is the content area essays. You're going to do 5 of those. Okay. Um, the up here again, where you're explaining the content area, I should have I should have looked down farther when I was trying to come up with the right words to explain this, but some things to help you with your writing. I have a bunch of writing prompts here. Feel free to use these to help describe the content area. Okay. Um, this is much easier than me trying to babble on here about what to write. These questions will help generate and get you thinking and help you with your writing. Okay. All right. Again, grading rubric. Okay. For that area, you're going to get a grade for each essay. Each one is worth 16 points. Okay. All right. So if you're completing a workflow analysis, this is where the instructions are for that. You want to identify a current as-is process at the PPE site. Okay. You're going to develop a workflow diagram for that current as-is process that clearly identifies who, what, and when, right? I'm not going to read all of this to you. So you're going to develop that diagram. You can use Lucidchart or Kaku or Office, whatever application you want. The main thing is that I can view it, right? So put it in a PDF or something. Just make sure I can view it. Then you're going to analyze the current state of that workflow to identify areas of opportunity. So here's several examples and things you can consider. Then you're going to develop a 2 to 3 page double-spaced report addressing the following. So you're going to a brief explanation of the process you chose to analyze and why you selected it. The other thing is, I just want to mention here that don't do this just because, right? Um, you could do it just because, but maybe you met with somebody and you're like, I think they could do that a better way, right? So use that workflow. Or talk with your mentor and be like, hey, I have to do this workflow analysis. Do you have anything that you want me to take a look at that might be helpful to you? I would be happy to, analyze a workflow that maybe you think could be improved, right? Make it beneficial for the site. If you're going to do it, make it beneficial, okay? And then how you conducted your analysis of the as-is process. So, were you doing interviews? How did you go about analyzing it? And then the findings of in the areas of opportunity. So these things, right? So what did you find through your analysis? And then share your thoughts on how the identified areas of opportunity could be remedied and how your solution could improve the process. Okay. And again, no unsolicited recommendations from the student, but if you're helping your mentor, definitely share, right? If they say, hey, why don't you take a look at this or whatever. Okay. Here's the rubric for that. then you have your management and leadership principles. So for this, in Unit 4, we're going to do a discussion where you're going to each develop 2 questions. You can take those questions and use them for this interview, okay? So they're going to stay there in Brightspace, and what you need to do is develop 10 interview questions for an interview with your site mentor, okay? And remember, you can use those ones that you developed in that discussion, and then um, you can, it can be your site mentor, it can be another leader, it can be a manager or supervisor, just somebody at the PPE site that's in a management role, right? You can use, if you find that you want to develop other questions, feel free to use them. But excuse me, that the main goal is to assess that leader's leadership style. Okay, so what you're going to do is you'll conduct that interview. Make sure you write down the 10 interview questions. Keep good notes because you need to summarize the interview. Okay, so you're going to provide the name and title of the person you're interviewing, a list of the interview questions, the leader's responses to the interview questions. It doesn't need to be word for word, but a nice summary of the responses. Okay, and then an assessment of the leader's leadership style. So provide rationale and examples to support your assessment. So are they authoritarian, democratic, or laissez-faire? Okay. Does the leader have a supervisory style of, you know, those, which one did they fall into, right? And then what leadership traits helped you reach that conclusion? Okay. Then you're going to develop an organization chart. And remember, this has to be a chart of your own creation. I do not want you copying and pasting from the organization's org chart. And then lastly, as part of that section, you're going to um, um, assess the leadership functions, or sorry, the management functions that that leader performs. So during that same interview with your site mentor or the leader, manager, supervisor you're interviewing, discuss the management functions they perform. And to familiarize yourself with those management functions, they're on page 654 to 658 in the Oaks and Waters text. Okay, so make sure you are familiar with those when you go into that interview. Okay. But as a reminder, they're planning, organizing, directing and leading, and then controlling and evaluating. So depending on their management level, they may or may not be involved in all of those functions. So, but I want you to develop a 2 to 3 page paper um, and explain how involved the leader you interviewed is in each of the 4 managerial functions, and explain why they may be more involved in some functions and not others. Okay. All right, sorry. I'm getting tired of talking. I think after all these lectures, I'm doing all of them in the same day. So, um, getting a little tongue-tied here. Just 2 more to go, everybody. Hang in there. And then the PPE reflection paper. This is probably the most straightforward of all, right? You're going to develop a paper that is 5 to 7 pages, double spaced. I'm not going to read all these specific things. I want you to read them, but it should address all of these elements here. I have A through L. Okay, so it's basically answering these questions, but please do it in a way where you're not using each of these as headings. Make it flow, make it nice. Show me some good depth of your reflection. Think about the goals that you set for yourself prior to the PPE and what you want to accomplish, or what you had wanted to accomplish and what you actually did accomplish. Maybe something unexpected was accomplished. Maybe you grew personally and professionally in different ways. Make sure you're sharing all of that information. I'm the only one that's going to read these. And this is probably my favorite part of the paper. All right, and then for those of you that cannot complete a workflow analysis, here's the guidelines and the instructions for the exploration section. Okay, so you're going to conduct an interview with a professional, and this should be somebody outside of the HIM department that's in a more non-traditional role. Remember, it's called an exploration for a reason. It's because you're exploring a role that you're not as familiar with. Okay. Um, um, And then let's see here. You should develop 20 to 30 open-ended interview questions. Okay. The questions should address all of the following. You're going to conduct an interview. You're going to then in the like the report that you're the section of the report that you're going to turn in, you're going to provide a listing of the interview questions, a summary of the interview. Okay, so again, this doesn't need to be just like, here's the question, here's the answer, here's the question, here's the answer. Please work to summarize the responses into a paper. Okay. Then develop an essay related to your personal strengths and weaknesses for a role such as the one the interview holds, right? So your essay should address what is there about yourself that you feel would make you successful in this position. So consider your top 5 themes or strengths discussed during the PPE course. What are the weaknesses you would need to strengthen prior to employment in this type of role and or setting? And lastly, is this a position you would like to hold and what makes it desirable or not desirable? Okay. So that is the final PPE report, everyone. I would say bookmark the PPE manual. I do have it linked in every single unit in the PPE course, so it's easy to find, but it's something that you're going to want while you're on the PPE. Some students print this out, put it in whatever kind of format you want, whatever works for you, right? But make sure that you are able to come away from the PPE with the information to develop this report. Okay. All right. That's all I have for you. Thank you.